EAGLES, Eagles.
And welcome in, everybody, to a Thursday edition of Birds 365 here on JAKIB Sports. I'm your host, Zander Krause. That's my co-host, Johnny Mac, John McMullen. Getting right into it in Eagle Land today, everybody. We've got a full 2-hour show planned for you guys. Got a great guest in hour number one. And a trade to talk about in Philadelphia that went down yesterday, as well as some other comments we will get into, and also an outlook at the full offseason like we've done. Johnny Mac, how you doing on this Thursday morning, my friend?
Doing well. Happy Red Rifle Day. Happy Andy Dalton Day.
Yeah. John, you just tipped the hand on what the trade was. For those who do not know, the Eagles have acquired Andy Dalton, John, for a 2027 7th-round draft pick. What do you make of it, J-Mac?
Well, I will say, and I don't blame anybody because I went there immediately too. That was my first thought before I talked to anybody about it, was that, hey, maybe they're going to trade Tanner McKee, but that does not look like the case, at least immediately. Certainly that's not why the deal was made, to trade Tanner McKee. Now, I do think it gives the team more flexibility. If somebody wants to come and, as Howie likes to say, bowl them over, I think it gives you that kind of flexibility to perhaps move him. Remember, he's entering the last year of his contract, so 99% you're going to lose him after next season anyway, so you can play one or the other. You can play the compensatory pick game and go for the long aspect of it, or if he signs a decent deal, which he should, or you can spin them off now. They couldn't have done that before this trade. So there is a little bit of that, but I was told pretty, from multiple sides that, they're not looking to trade Tanner McKee. This is just how much they value the quarterback room, and they don't want to be in a position where their season is ruined. And we've seen that in other cities where the starter gets hurt, the season's ruined. Some cities, they have a decent backup and he gets hurt and they're ruined. And the Eagles have a long history of this, really dating back to Gardner Minshew when they had Joe Flacco. They traded for him. They obviously they brought in Sam Howell last year, who has extensive starting experience. So they've done this in the past where they have these, what you would consider very high level quarterback threes. This might be the highest level quarterback three in history, though. Well, I don't know. Joe Flacco was actually 2 when he was here. So they traded Joe. And
you do think Dalton will be 3, right? You don't think he's here?
Yeah, I know. No, he's unquestionably number 3. Unquestionably. Okay. He's got 169 NFL starts. If you want to count the playoffs, 173. Big time player in his prime, 3-time Pro Bowler. Obviously, he's older, 38. He's not what he once was. I always look at his time in Cincinnati, and people kind of scoff because they made the playoffs a bunch of straight years and never won a playoff game. I always look at it differently. Look at Cincinnati before he got there, before he and Marvin Lewis got there. Look at them after they left.
Right.
And it was a disaster until they recovered with Joe Burrow. So I always kind of looked at it differently. He was a very good quarterback in his prime and, probably a better fit, if you want to say that, from what they want to run offensively. But as far as quarterback threes go, I mean, you can't get any better than this. And that's what he's in, and he gives them more flexibility. If somebody wants to offer a 2nd-round pick or a conditional 3rd-round pick, maybe for Tanner McKee, then you can move them and feel comfortable that you have a good backup quarterback. So flexibility, but he'll start make no mistake, he's behind Tanner McKee.
That's good stuff. I like the flexibility phrasing, John. Obviously, if you have a 4th or a 5th or a 6th-round rookie in there, you're probably not going to be comfortable trading Tanner McKee if somebody were to make the offer. This obviously gives him that comfortability. Johnny Mac, do you think they did this for the experience? You just talked about how many games he's played, and I've been looking at this room in this building, and something I've thought about in the past is, boy, they're not surrounding Jalen Hurts with a lot of, experience. I mean, you have Parks Frazier, you have Mannion, who does have a lot of experience. Certainly not at the level that Jalen Hurts has played at, but does have a lot of experience, obviously, as a former quarterback. But I think this is the name that really brings, Andy Dalton might not have played the game at a higher level than Jalen Hurts, but what he did do is he played a lot more games than Jalen Hurts. He's seen a lot more. He's been a part of more, eras in football. He's seen more defensive coverages. I think he can really help Jalen Hurts in that area. Now, maybe they don't think about it like that, but I think that's an added benefit for sure. Do you think that's a part of the acquisition here?
No, I never that, because that's the coach's job. Even when you have a veteran of that experience, obviously he's older than Sean Mannion. He's played more football than Sean Mannion. So
Right.
if you want to look at it that way, and I get when you're on the field, yeah, he can be helpful. But I mean, that's just the chain of sort of job description. You don't want to overwhelm, because people could look at it that way and say, well, this guy knows more than Parks Frazier. Again, you could say this guy knows more than Sean Mannion, but you can't have that sort of upheaval. It's like when Josh McCown was here, if you want to go all the way back to Josh McCown, and how many years he played. But yeah, I don't, that is sort of not how it works. It's similar to the Scott Leffler stuff when that sort of took off in a viral way, and people are saying, oh, he's taking over the offense. Yeah, it doesn't work that way. You don't take over the offense as a quarterback coach. You don't take over the quarterback room as a quarterback. That's the role of Parks Frazier. So it has to work that way. There's there's a flow chart, and
I don't mean take it over, John, but what about, you get off the sideline, quarterback three's on the sideline now.
Well, yeah. I mean, that's just natural.
Yeah, right.
Back and forth. And that happens with every quarterback group. And yeah, if you have somebody who's better at it, then it can't hurt. But I don't think it has anything to do with placing him with Jalen Hurts. That's all I'm trying to say.
Yeah, gotcha. That makes sense. John, do you go ahead.
Yeah, it's just about depth at the quarterback position. That's what it's about.
Gotcha. What do you make of the money, John? I saw your original tweet where you did reference at the open here, where you're like, you thought it was about Tanner McKee, probably because of the money, John. I mean, I think it's about $3 or $4 million he's making this year, so I don't think it's a big deal. But like you put out on X, I mean, it's an expensive quarterback 3 for sure. What do you make of that?
Well, it's a big deal for a third quarterback. Yeah, it's not a big deal at all for a backup. Scheduled to make $3.9 million. I haven't gone through every third quarterback in the NFL, but I'm pretty sure that's going to be at the top. So it's typically not the way, from a longer term perspective, all the fans went nuts and said, well, it doesn't matter, blah, blah, blah. Howie's great, this, that. Look, everybody's got cap restraints, and the Eagles have had a number of cap restraints to the point where they had to create space, and they have, because it's not, again, it's malleable. It's not something. There's one thing I can guarantee. I tell everybody every year, everybody's going to be cap compliant. It's never happened where somebody hasn't been cap compliant, because they have to be. There's no alternative. So you do what you have to do. But the point is, when you're building a 53-man roster, you have little increments, and obviously third quarterback, typically you don't budget that much money for. But the Eagles, as I said, value the position more than most. And you see some of these teams who just their seasons are completely ruined. And I should also brought up Kenny Pickett. They brought in Gardner Minshew. They brought in Kenny Pickett. They brought in Sam Howell. Now they brought in Andy Dalton. It's time to admit to ourselves, they just value this position more than everybody else. And they don't want to ruin a season where they're a contender and say, look, you're probably not going to win with Tanner McKee if Jalen Hurts gets hurt. You're probably not going to win with Andy Dalton if Jalen Hurts and Tanner McKee get hurt. But you could still make the playoffs. Your season's not going to be ruined. I get everybody in Philadelphia is turned into Super Bowl or bust. So from that standard, you're probably not going to live up to it. But from the Eagles sentiment, if you're in that position, you want to stay competitive. You want to be a playoff team to take advantage of, and who knows what happens in playoff games. And this is a guy who can do it, just like Kenny Pickett could do it, and Sam Howell probably could have done it. And again, Gardner Minshew did it, and you had Joe Flacco in the past, and Marcus Mariota. I mean, Marcus, of course, was a backup, but they have a long history of bringing in these types of quarterbacks with experience as insurance policy.
I like it. John, you think it changes their draft plans? I think we all thought probably they would look for a quarterback in the 5th, 6th, 7th, I don't know, somewhere in that range. We even floated Garrett Nussmeier, Drew Aller, guys like that. You think this changes their plan in the draft for quarterback?
Well, I think it changes it from the perspective of a Nussmeier or somebody like that who's sort of on the cusp of being a real prospect. I could probably word it better, but developmental. No, I think they always like the draft if they like one. They did it last year with Kyle McCord. It didn't work out. They have that Ron Wolf philosophy: draft a quarterback every year if you can, if you like one. And sooner or later, you probably get a Brock Purdy who clicks and can do some things. But day 3, I don't think it changes it, but certainly day 2, if there was any thought that they would take a quarterback, that's kind of out the window, I would think.
Good stuff there, Johnny Mac. Andy Dalton has landed in Philly. What did you call him? What's the name they're using for him?
The Red Rifle. That's his nickname.
Rifle.
Yeah.
So you got the Mormon Missile and the Red Rifle.
Yeah.
Eagles building an artillery at the backup quarterback spot. I like it. John, question. Do you put anything on, and maybe it's nothing, on the fact that all the quarterbacks they seem to bring in, behind Jalen Hurts, none of them really match the style of play of Jalen Hurts? Now, there's been some instances where it has, but for the most part, it's really different styles of quarterbacks at the backup and even the third string spot here for the Philadelphia Eagles. Does it mean anything? Is it just a preference? Is it, what do you make of it? I think some people look at that and wonder, why do you want to change the entire offense if Jalen were to miss a game or two? How do you look at that?
Yeah, I don't think it's easy to find. What's the word I always use to describe Jalen Hurts? It's unique.
Yep.
It's not easy to find. They don't exist. And if you're just plucking somebody because he's even if you talk about dual threat quarterbacks, he's a different type of dual threat quarterback than the other dual threat quarterbacks. He's like a fullback playing quarterback, always has been, more than say the Lamar Jackson type who's, a souped up video game or and Caleb Williams, you see that now as a younger player, and guys like he's even different in the dual threat mode. He's different. I suppose you could bring in a dual threat and get closer to it, but I don't think the idea is, again, to always build around your quarterback, whomever it is, and the idea is to get good players, and if they're not similar styles, that's up to the coaching staff to shift. And I think part of them enjoy it when Tanner McKee would get to play and do some different things, from not the standpoint of wanting to get away, but the standpoint of it being a challenge in your aspect. So I've never believed in that thought process at the quarterback position. It works both ways. And, if your quarterback is whomever, insert name, Matthew Stafford, it's not like you're trying to replicate what the MVP can do. You're just trying to find a guy who can help you win a game if he's forced to play. That's the goal.
Good stuff there, Johnny Mac. John, what else happened in Eagle Land yesterday? Nothing big, but I do think there were some comments from Lane Johnson I saw about the offense, excited about the Sean Mannion offense. I saw what was going on last night, that Jalen Hurts was hanging out with Tom Brady and Joe Burrow and Saquon Barkley. Was it the flag football?
Yeah, the big flag football thing that was going to be in Saudi Arabia, but can't be in Saudi Arabia because there's a war going on in the Middle East. So I'm not
laughing at the war. I'm laughing at just the way you worded that.
They moved it to Las Vegas, and that's happening, I guess. I think it's this weekend. I mean, I try to block out flag football as much as I can because I'm trying to delay the inevitable future, I think. And I tell that story all the time of
Yeah.
Irv Mushnick telling me it's going to go to flag football. And I laughed at him, laughed out loud. And now I realize I had to apologize because he's 100% right. That's where we're going. And I tried to slow it down as much as possible. But yeah, that's that Saudi Arabia thing that they moved to Las Vegas. He's going to be a part of it. Saquon's going to be a part of it. I think it's this weekend, but I'm not 100% sure.
No, me neither. Good stuff there. And then Lane Johnson made some comments yesterday also on the Eagles' new offense with Sean Mannion. You know, he said there's excitement for him and Mailata, John, who won't be left on an island as much potentially this year and is excited about what that could bring for him. So I thought that was an interesting comment from Lane Johnson. What'd you make of it?
Yeah. You know, I remember Lane talking when Chip Kelly left way back. And he was, I think, the happiest I've ever seen him. The Eagles do leave their tackles on an island a lot, more than probably anybody else in the NFL. Like, it's all theory at this point with Sean Mannion. Like, we know what they're going to try to do. We know they're going to try to replicate. We've talked about it a lot. Our buddy Andrew DiCecco is going to be on it. We'll get him to talk about it. They're going to try to replicate Shanahan-like offense, McVay-like offense. And yeah, that'll mean more of the stuff that got Brock Purdy killed in the NFC Championship game. So it could be good, it could be bad. Depending, if you're going back and turning your back to the defense and play action, and the tight end's got to go over and chip the edge, well, he better chip the edge, and the quarterback better get the ball out on time. So everything right now is just theory, and I'm sure he's excited because it's new, but I wouldn't get too overhyped because remember, they're not even meeting with the coaches right now. They're not even doing things. But from their perspective, they're left on an island a lot. And in theory, that's probably not going to happen as much in this offense.
Good stuff there, Johnny Mac. Good opening segment. I want to thank everybody for being here this morning. Don't forget to hit that like button. Subscribe to the channel if you're not already. Appreciate everybody being here. March 19th, you're getting closer to the NFL draft. I think we're like 34 days away, J-Mac, if you can believe it. The NFL draft right around the corner. We got Andrew DiCecco right now. Haven't talked to Andrew in a little bit. Looking forward to it. You guys can follow him on X at Andrew DiCecco, one of the best in the business covering the Philadelphia Eagles. Andrew, welcome to the show, man. Thanks for joining us on this Thursday morning.
Yeah, I appreciate you saying that, Zander. Great to be with you guys. How are you?
Doing well. Good to see you, buddy. It's
Good
football guy day. That's what I like to call it, the checker. We're going to elevate the conversation, hopefully.
We will. We'll try.
Absolutely.
But we'll start there. I mean, I get to talk to you all the time, but we haven't had you on the show. So your thought process just in general with free agency, I don't think much went awry other than the Eagles let Jalen Phillips get to the open market, and he got paid a whole bunch of money and had a walk-away number. They walked away, but now they still need an edge rusher. Where do you think they are? And it's still early in talent gathering season, March 19th. A lot of moves to go, as you saw yesterday with Andy Dalton. We'll talk about that as well. But how do you gauge these early days of the offseason?
I mean, Howie Roseman laid out the plan for anyone who was willing to listen at the NFL Scouting Combine after the season and the end of season presser. So I kind of went into it expecting that they were going to be shopping in that second tier. They weren't going to overextend themselves. There wasn't going to be this free agent splash. And Jalen Phillips at $30 million, the Eagles should be commended for having a walkaway price and not falling victim to that. And look, he was a good player for the Eagles. He did a lot. He was a two-way guy. He liked being in Philadelphia, but you have to have a walkaway price. There's always a plan B. There's always a second option and a fallback plan. Nakobe was expected to leave. Reed Blankenship, I expected him to leave. Dallas Goedert early in free agency, I was expecting the Eagles to find a way to keep him, knowing that he was 31 years old, has an extensive injury history, And I just believe that he had more value to the Eagles than maybe he would to another team. And then ultimately they were able to work that out. But I am intrigued with some of the other middle tier signings like McMullen, and we'll have to see how that Hollywood Brown. They seem to be good fits for different reasons. And on those 1-year deals, they have a chance to use this opportunity as a springboard towards a more lucrative situation for them. So I think you have to like those optics, on its face.
Andrew, I like it. Good stuff, man. We haven't had you on, so I do want to, before we get into some of the detailed stuff on the offense, what do you make of this projected change coming in? We haven't heard from you on our Birds 365, so they've been really successful, Andrew. They really have. I know it hasn't been all perfect on offense, but they've won a lot of football games in the last 4 years, and now we have a projected big change here on offense. What do you make of the new staff and what this offense might look like next year?
Yeah.
So John and I talked a lot about this last season, just in, the day-to-day. And the offense, I personally thought that Patullo took a little bit too much flack there. They ran it back offensively because they just won a Super Bowl running that same offense. The problem is 31 other teams. What did they do during the offseason? They spent time trying to figure out what the Eagles did well and went in there trying to stop that. The Eagles did not adjust. That was a problem. It wasn't a good offense. There were a lot of reasons for that. But moving things forward here, Sean Mannion, you keep hearing what a Sean Mannion offense is going to look like. But the reality is we have no idea what a Sean Mannion offense is going to look like. You can look at some of his influences and try to draw your own conclusions there. Sean McVay, Kevin O'Connell, Kyle Shanahan. And if we're going off of that, it's going to be a pretty stark contrast to what we've seen the Eagles do in the past. Do I have questions about that? I do. Because the Eagles have run a certain style with a little bit different elements here and there with Kellen Moore, but they ultimately had to revamp that and scale it back and go back to the way that it was pretty simplistic, running the football, utilizing your offensive line. But this is going to be more play action under center. The ball's got to come out. The offense has to be in a rhythm, midfield utilization. And I think you're going to see a lot more spacing when it comes to routes and some creativity there. But this is going to be a major difference, a major departure from what they've done, especially in the run designs and the run schemes there, because you have to also ask yourself, what kind of offensive lineman do you need to be able to carry out this type of scheme in your vision? So I have a lot of questions. This kind of change, to be clear, is necessary, but I'm curious to see how long it takes for things to start to gel.
You mentioned it. Yeah, I think people don't talk about the running game in this offense enough because they're obsessed with the passing game and what Sean Mannion's going to bring to the passing game. And I get that part of it, but I think, we talk about Stout and Lane Johnson mentioned Stout might be around. That was another thing he mentioned. That would be big news to see if those two sides have already sort of made up. But, different offensive line coach, Chris Cooper. We don't know. We'll give him a chance, but, the history isn't great with Minnesota, which hasn't had a good running game. You have a new run game coordinator, so they're kind of piecemealing it together to replace Jeff Stoutland. But my question, and you brought it up with the offensive line, is the fit. Do you start looking at different types of offensive linemen? You have Monroe Freeling's probably going to go too high now, but very athletic. Blake Miller, I look at Clemson. Very athletic. Then I look at running back and I say, this is where you need the patient guy. This is where you think about Kenneth Walker in the Super Bowl, that patience, maybe the best ever, Le'Veon Bell, the most patient. This is where you sort of string it out and let the blocks develop. Does that sound like Saquon Barkley to Andrew DiCecco?
Not entirely. I've seen moments last season where Saquon's gotten more patient when he got to the second level, but more often than not, he's just a see it and go. And I thought that last season, instead of taking the 3 or 4 yards in front of him, he sort of fell victim to, I got to make a play. I got to make something happen. And you're trying to hit the home run and you're not taking you're taking what's blocked up in front of you. And yeah, he was pressing a little bit, but in this offense, you have, if it's going to be that wide zone, the stretch plays, you have to allow time for your blocks to develop. You have to be patient and find the crease there. I've seen him do it, so I'm not going to say he can't do it, but it's about doing it with consistency. And that's a lot of what you're looking at with this offense. A lot of these guys have done these things before, but it's about doing it with consistency.
Andrew, what do you make of this offensive line, man? I think we can talk about all these offensive changes, but last year the offensive line just did not play like we're used to them playing. Now you have no Jeff Stoutland, you have Chris Cooper coming in, and you just talked about the potential changes on offense. I mean, we could talk about the health of Juergens and Dickerson. I think that's a big question. It's also a question of, does Dickerson fit this kind of offense? I mean, Dickerson is that mauler, big offensive lineman. You know, you might need a little bit more versatility there. How do you see the offensive line, you know, and how they might work in this new scheme?
Yeah, it's a great question, Zander. And I think from what we're expecting to see under Chris Cooper and Sean Mannion and Ryan Mahaffey, it's going to play into the hands of Lane Johnson, Jordan Mailata, Cam Juergens, if he's right, will really fit well here. Tyler Steen as well. Landon Dickerson might be the only one. And he's pretty athletic for his size, but he's much better going forward, moving vertically and imposing his will on defenders than he is stretching and trying to be a lateral mover. But I think with the players that they have, they more often than not, they should be okay. They really like Drew Kendall. I can tell you that. He would be a good fit there if they need him to play in a pinch. I thought Brett Toth would have been a really good depth option and probably is one of their more underrated losses that isn't talked about enough because he gives you that veteran presence who fits better in this style, in my estimation anyway, than he did in the previous school there. But yeah, I think they'll be okay, but I'm curious to see where they go in the offensive line in the draft. I like Blake Miller from Clemson. I like Monroe Freeling. And then there's a lot of other smaller, more athletic guards that I think would be a better fit here. So Jeff Stoutland would look at someone like a Caden Proctor and make it work. Whereas you might need to look for a more athletic lineman who's a little lighter and doesn't anchor as well as some of the players that the Eagles have had in the past to better fit what they're trying to do. I'm fascinated by it.
Penn State, Vega, is it Owiani? But, you know, interior offensive lineman, he's going to be in for 30 visits. And boy, you know, historically, you wouldn't think about the Eagles taking a legitimate guard at 23 overall, but maybe we're in a different era where they would consider something like that, especially with the long-term prospects of Landon Dickerson and how long he will be able to play if we'll ever get back to the level he played before. And Tyler Steen's entering the final year of his rookie contract. So pretty quickly you could have tremendous turnover inside on what has been, let's be honest, the foundation of this football team. So that'll be something to keep an eye on. But let's talk about the Red Rifle. Happy Red Rifle Day. Andy Dalton. Now, I don't blame people because my first reaction, Andrew, was, oh boy, you know, Tanner McKee watch. And then after you poke around a little bit and talk to some people, look, this team just values the backup quarterback position, and they don't want to be in a position where their season is ruined, as you've seen in some other cities, because they don't pay attention. And their history is, look, they traded for Gardner Minshew. They traded for Kenny Pickett when Tanner McKee was already here. They
Joe
Flacco, Sam Howell last year as a third quarterback. I mean, that's tremendous experience. So Andy's going to come in as the quarterback 3, and he might be, I think, 173 NFL starts is the number if you include the postseason. He might be the most capable quarterback 3 in NFL history.
Mm-hmm.
But it does give them flexibility. If somebody picks up the phone and, as Howie likes to say, blows him away and says, hey, we'll give you a conditional 3 for Tanner McKee. Would you do that deal now that you have Andy Dalton, Andrew DiCecco?
I have to think hard about it because I think Andy Dalton gives you competent quarterback play, 179 career games, 169 starts in the regular season. And Tanner McKee, you don't quite know what he's going to be. I mean, he didn't particularly fare well when he was pressed into service last season. There were reasons for that. He was playing with the backups. But if you're talking about, you said a 3rd-round pick, John?
Yeah, conditional 3 that can turn into a 2. I think that would blow Howie away. I would absolutely do that.
And this arms you with that kind of versatility that you can do that down the line if you're blown away, if you're offered that circumstance. But right now, this is common practice for what the Eagles do. You mentioned all the different quarterbacks that they brought in before the regular season. They traded for Sam Howell. Could they have gotten by for 2 or 3 weeks with a veteran who was just previously released or Kyle McCord? Probably, but they don't want to leave anything up to chance. And they want to make sure that room is as strong as it possibly can be. They value the position more than most teams do around the NFL. So at first glance, you look at it and you say $3.9 million. That's awfully rich for a third quarterback to be making next season. But then when you look a little bit beyond the surface, you're like, this is how the Eagles do business. They're not afraid to make sure they allocate more resources when it comes to the quarterback position. And then we'll have to see if there's any aftermath that falls from it down the line, if they're blown away.
Yeah, we'll see what happens there. Andrew, a necessary evil of the Eagles offseason, the A.J. Brown trade conversation. All right, you saw Jalen Waddle get traded this week, first-round pick and some extra picks. Patriots are circling. You're hearing a lot about that. What's your read on where the A.J. Brown situation actually stands, and what do you make of the whole saga as it's unfolding?
Yeah, it's kind of at a standstill right now, Zander, but I think it's a matter of when he gets moved, not if. The more information that I've gathered
you do think he's gone now?
I do, but I would think it would be after June 1st. Right. Throughout the offseason, the early part of it, I was leaning towards AJ staying. Then you go to the combine and your perspective changes on things, the more information that you have at your disposal. And I think right now it seems like they're almost at a crossroads, and it feels like when and not if. But yeah, I mean, the Eagles aren't just going to give him away. It's going to have to be a value because he's still a really good football player. I think he has a couple years of dominance. There's going to be questions about injury. He's had soft tissue injuries. He's had knee flare-ups. I guess the teams are a little concerned about. But I think this is still a dominant player. And to get a dominant player, the Eagles are going to want something pretty significant in compensation. So I think it will happen, but it's ultimately going to come down to what does AJ want? Can you make this work? Can Sean Mannion talk to you, and will that be enough to get you on board? Or if you're AJ, you're going to say, I've seen this before. There's been Patullo who came in as a first-year coordinator, Brian Johnson. The offense largely looked the same. I respect you, but I'm going to go do this over here because I think I can reach my fullest potential in another offense. So it's kind of a tricky situation to look at, but AJ has made it known that he wants to dominate games, that he knows the kind of caliber of player he is and what he can do. His thrill is dominating a defensive back in front of him, watching them drop their head in submission. And does he get that opportunity in Philadelphia? He has, but it's not consistently every Sunday. And I think with him, that's been the big hang up.
Yeah, he's done it stunningly a lot, even in this off. You think about what he did to Lattimore. You think about what he did to that Emmanuel Forbes, that poor kid. And that
he ruined his career, pretty much.
He's done it quite a bit. You saw what he did to Isaiah Rodgers, our old buddy, last year in that game. So he's been able to do it quite a bit. But yeah, AJ's a great dude. I say it all the time, but he doesn't think like everybody else. That's what I think. Everybody goes off base with AJ, Andrew. He does, everybody assumes, I think, too many people assume everybody's the same. And it's like, well, if you make them happy, to me, it's about, look, the ball doesn't come out when it should come out. And when there are opportunities, he doesn't think they're taken advantage of. And that's it. And it's not going to change. And it's not going to change with the coordinator. It's not going to change anything. So I'm with you. I think it's a matter of when, and I've shifted from that philosophy. But it's pretty clear. Jimmy Sexton was out in Indy, shopping. And look, he's got a list of teams he'd go to. What more do people need to see the writing on the wall? I'm kind of amazed that they won't admit it to themselves. But you're a big draft guy. We'll segue there. We talked a little bit about free agency. By the way, are you going to any pro days yet? You got anything set up?
I'm going to aim for Maryland. They had Jalen Husky, their defensive back, didn't test the combine, and I'm kind of curious to see what teams show up and how he performs. I'm out of town, so I couldn't go to Penn State yesterday. But
yeah, well, they all
Rutgers already
tested well.
happened.
That closed circuit, they all tested well. Penn State's famous for
no
having
surprise.
that. Yeah,
historic numbers. Yeah,
the 38-yard field, the joke. They're all going to test well in Penn State, and Ryan Myers was out at Stanford's Pro Day, which I think was interesting because Sam Roush is out there, and I think
one of my favorite tight end prospects in this class, by the way.
Yeah, he might be relevant for the Eagles, so that was interesting. But we talked a little bit about free agency, and I'm not a big mock draft guy. I don't like mock drafts, but I get everybody gets excited, but they're really goofy before free agency if you think about it from the standpoint of you don't know what holes are filled. So is this burst into the second wave of free agency, has that changed your thought of where the Eagles might go at the top of the draft? And not just the 23, but the primary picks, the day 1 and day 2 picks.
Well, I think the Jalen Phillips one does because they certainly need to bolster the edge room. They don't have enough there. It's the same group that they took into last offseason. And they're good players. Jalen Hunt's more of a 2. Nolan Smith, I think, is better suited to be a third edge rusher. They still need that frontline guy. Maybe it's a Keldrick Falk out of Auburn, who I think would slot in at 23. I like him quite a bit, 6'6". Other than that, John, they still needed a safety. They still need a young wide receiver because you have to get younger on that side of the ball. They still needed a tight end. So I don't know that my perspective changed on the Eagles' needs and how they might go about doing it, especially offensive tackle. I think that's going to be top of the list, top of the priority list for the Eagles. But other than that, not so much. I think they might go edge rusher a little earlier than they may have ordinarily because unless you do something with the trade, you just don't have enough there.
I agree, and replacing that in the draft to me is not going to be enough. I mean, I understand the point that everybody makes that paying $30 million for Jalen Phillips is too much. I understand that, but that doesn't mean you don't have to replace him. You got to find a good, competent player to replace him on your football team. I think they're going to have to do that via trade. We'll see if they do it. What do you make of the rest of the defensive overhaul, Andrew? It's been 2 years now, man. We're a lot of guys leaving on that defense. Reed Blankenship, Nakobe Dean, obviously Jalen Phillips gone this year. They did bring in Tariq Woolen, Jonathan Jones, a couple other players. What do you make of all the change on that defensive side of the ball with them being really a defensive football team the last couple of years?
Yeah, well, they have their cornerstone components in place, and they will be in place for the foreseeable future. But as long as you have guys like that, guys like Quinyon Mitchell, Cooper DeJean, Jalen Carter, Jordan Davis, we'll see about Jalux Hunt and some of those other guys down the line here. But when you have that, you're able to kind of almost have, you don't want to say interchangeable parts, but you're able to kind of swap out at certain positions. Safety is one of them. You have Drew Makuba, but I think you could stand to get a little bit more athletic there on the back end because for as solid as Reed Blankenship played during his time, there were plays to be made in coverage that he just didn't have the range in order to be able to make. And good tackler, great story, instinctual guy. Vic Fangio respects and values what he brought to the table. But the modern era, you have to be able to cover some ground. And I think that's an area where they can upgrade. Rick Woolen, you tried it with Adoree Jackson. You tried it with Jacorian Bennett, Keely Ringo. Didn't work out. You have to get someone in there that has played at a high level before. And he has. It's been a few seasons. But good length, good athleticism. You bet on those type of players reaching their ceiling, especially when they have financial ramifications to benefit from that. And then that defensive line is really where it all starts. So as long as you have complementary pieces at the second and third level, which the Eagles do, that I don't think there's going to be a drop off at all in terms of their production.
You think they could use another premium pick on safety? I mean, they did draft Vancouver in the second last year. I know a lot of people like that. Oregon thing, him and then the Oregon safety in round one. I just don't. I
love Dylan.
Yeah.
He's my guy, man.
Thieneman's good, but you'd have to probably take him in the first. That's a little rich.
Yeah, that's right.
Emmanuel McNeil Warren is a player who I like a lot. 6'3" or 6'4" from Toledo, has a good relationship with Quinyon Mitchell, and he's a ball hawk. But again, when you have so many other needs, could you wait and get maybe a Zakee Wheatley from Penn State early or late day 2, early day 3, and maybe address other needs that are more pertinent? I think the Eagles have proven that they'll do that. Edge rusher, offensive line, wide receiver if one falls to them. Even a tight end. This is a really deep class of tight ends. Yeah. And had they not re-signed Dallas Goedert, they could have gotten 2 tight ends in this class, one that's more of a blocking specialist and one that has that receiving prowess that you look for.
Jalen Kilgore is coming in for a 30 visit, the safety from South Carolina. So he should be in the range of Wheatley. You mentioned Wheatley from Penn State. They go that direction. Would you be comfortable having that kind of guy next to Drew McCuba, who's still learning? Boy, that's a lot of youth, a lot of athleticism, but a lot of youth. And one of the reasons, Andrew, I think Reed had a down season in coverage is he was told to play it a little bit safer because, Drew McCuba was learning and they were trying. I think that was sort of a directive. Not to say he's a great athlete or a great coverage player, but I do think that played into it. Can you go with somebody young like Kilgore or Wheatley and Drew McCuba? That's
no. I mean, I don't think that could be your plan for week 1. You could still draft that player and then maybe bring back a Marcus Epps. I thought Geno Stone in free agency would have been a really good veteran to settle things down. Maybe you have a Marcus Epps start for a few weeks, and then eventually when you feel comfortable with the communication with take your pick, a Kilgore, a Wheatley, or whomever, then I could see that happening. But if you remember early last season, there were some coverage busts. There were communication breakdowns that Drew McCuba was fully accountable for, but they happened. And that's in this defense where linebacker and safety play, there's a considerable amount of responsibility placed on their shoulders in a Vic Fangio defense. I don't know that you can go in there with a player in Drew McCuba who's still really green, didn't finish his rookie season because of injury, and then, let's say an early day 3 safety. I think the most logical course of action would be to add a veteran who has started games in the NFL, who can grasp the system pretty quickly. Marcus Epps would be a really good fit, knowing the system.
A little bit of Eagles news. The Eagles, per Mike Garafolo, our buddy at the NFL Network, NFL Media, Eagles recently reworked Jake Elliott's contract, trimming his base from $6 million to $5 million, but guaranteeing all of it. So Eagles got a little bit of relief, but Jake Elliott's going to be back, and he struggled, obviously, over the past 2 seasons, at least according, from his previous standard. And Carson Wentz has re-signed with the Vikings, so officially making J.J. McCarthy a quarterback 3, sort of pseudo-Eagle news. Carson Wentz probably going to be the backup to Kyler Murray there. Jake Elliott, though, we don't get a lot of special teams talk. I would have brought in some competition. I get it. He makes a lot of money for a kicker. You don't want to move on. But at some point, we see how they budget for quarterback 3. We see how they manipulate money all the time. Here's another example. Would you have sort of wanted to push Jake Elliott, or do you say, hey, he's figured it out in the past. Let's just continue on that path?
Well, Howie Roseman at the NFL Scouting Combine was pretty adamant in his support for Jake Elliott, but that shouldn't preclude the Eagles from bringing in competition. I would have taken a stab at a veteran and anyone out there on the free agent market to bring in, if not for any other reason than competition, because Jake has gone, and you know this, John, uncontested for a number of seasons now, and he's been shaky. And I don't know that you can just go into it with the mindset of, that's Jake, he'll bounce back, because there's going to be a time where that doesn't happen. I don't think that I think the Eagles are smart for holding on to Jake Elliott, because how many times do you see kickers around the NFL? They'll have a bad Sunday, they'll get waived, released, and then they'll be on another team the next day. It's really hard to find dependable kickers in this league, but that's not to say that you shouldn't bring in someone that could push them. And you might be surprised. Maybe they are more consistent, and then you have a difficult decision to make after the draft as well. An undrafted free agent kicker might be prudent to bring someone like that in to add a little bit of heat to the seat to Jake Elliott that I think is getting a little warmer.
Yeah, and I mean, anybody who watched the NFL last year saw how much kickers make a difference. I mean, kickers are all over the place. You'd think they would really put some stock in that. All right, Andrew, last question for me. Dallas Goedert reworks the deal, comes back. What do you make of his fit in the offense and the return of Dallas Goedert for year number 9 in Philadelphia?
Yeah, I think it's the best fit for both sides. Dallas Goedert, for some reason, to me, Zander, he doesn't get the same amount of respect or accolades outside of Philadelphia. He seems to be more valued in this city, and I think a lot of that has to do with the injury history. He's typically going to get you 600-700 receiving yards a season, and he's not looked at as a George Kittle or a Sam Laporta, Trey McBride, Travis Kelce, but he has a good rapport with Jalen Hurts on the field. He's good in the red zone. He has regressed as a blocker, but I think in this offense, which we're expecting to see a little bit more variance in terms of route creativity and utilization, Dallas Goedert should, in theory, be able to maximize his ability a little bit more, working the seams and doing some different things off of play action. I really do believe that he has another level that he can get to and play probably a couple years at a high level. And I think that was the best solution for the Eagles, rather than going into the great unknown, adding a David Njoku or take your pick, whoever was left.
Plus,
you don't know how they're going to fit. You don't know how they're going to fit schematically, but you also don't know how they're going to fit from a culture perspective. Dallas Goedert understands the pressure and all the things that come with playing in this city. He's beloved by teammates in the locker room, and this is the only place he's known. So I think it made sense from all parties.
And don't forget the business part. You don't get the $20 million at dead cap and accelerate.
Well, yeah, that's the main part right there. But from the on-field fit, that's all that. But the Eagles certainly saved themselves some significant dead money hit there with the $20.5 million or thereabouts. So that's
where do you think they go in the draft now with tight end?
What's that?
Where do you think they go in the draft with tight end?
I would look at day 2. So for me, and I can give you guys some comps here.
Yeah, I'm curious to hear your names if you don't mind.
Yeah, so in the first round, Sadiq, I think it's a little rich for the Eagles at 23, but he kind of reminds me a little bit of Vernon Davis in the way that he plays the game. Then I think the second tight end for me that would be realistic for the Eagles would be Eli Stowers out of Vanderbilt. He catches the ball really well. He's a work in progress as a blocker, but if you want to kind of draw a comparison in the NFL, Evan Ingram would be the guy for me to look at there. And Max Clare would be another guy, Zander, in day 2. If you're the Eagles, you give some consideration to Ohio State guy. Has some Zach Ertz to him in his game, though he can block a little bit more effectively than Zach can. And then if Sam Roush is just a nasty blocker, you mentioned Sam Roush earlier, John, with Ryan Myers being at Stanford, and he is a really physical guy. He's a more athletic Jack Stoll in that kind of mold. He runs guys over after the catch, and he's just super physical. So I like him quite a bit too.
Yeah, I think if you get Sam, there's 3 guys. Oscar Delp, who I think was funny at the combine when he was talking about people look at him as a blocker, but I don't know. I'm reading he's very athletic.
He's a really athletic guy.
Yeah. Roush and Eli Raritan, the kid from Notre Dame, who's I think can play in line. If you get one of those guys on day 3, is Johnny Munt this year's Harrison Bryant? I saw his contract to check out.
Look, that's great. And by the way, Sam Roush, it reminds me of Stoll in terms of body type, not in style of play, just to be clear. But because of the talent, the wealth of talent in this draft class, I don't know that Johnny Munt should be considered a lock to make the team. He brings a certain skill set that they need, but that's not something that you can't find in this draft. And ideally, you want to find someone with some balance. And Oscar Delp, I'm glad you brought him up. He's sort of a mystery when you look at the NFL draft, because he did a lot of blocking, wasn't utilized all that much in terms of volume, but he has a lot of athletic ability. Just look at some of the clips where he's jumping over defenders and things like that. He's an explosive guy.
All right, Andrew, final one on the spot here. You're on the board at pick 23. Give me a name and or a position that the Eagles will take in round 1 this year.
Blake Miller. I'll say Blake Miller.
Yeah.
I
told you, football guy. I've been talking about Blake Miller for a while now. I love that fit for the Eagles.
Yeah.
Projecting where they're going. At Andrew DiCecco, make sure you follow him on X, the X platform. Read him at InsideTheBirds.com. Does a great job over there with our buddies Jeff Mosher, Adam Kaplan. Listen to him. 97.5 The Fanatic. Does a great job for them covering the Eagles. All around great guy. All around great football guy. More importantly, good to catch up on air. Andrew DiCecco.
Yep.
Yeah, thanks for having me on, guys. It was great. Great to chat with you guys and chop it up.
Yeah, appreciate it. There's Andrew DiCecco joining us. Thanks, brother. There's Andrew DiCecco. Appreciate him joining us here today on Birds 365. Give him a follow at Andrew DiCecco. He is one of the best, Johnny Mac. Always good to talk to Andrew. We haven't talked to him in a little bit, so we do appreciate him joining in today. Some good thoughts, John, and I do like where he went in a lot of areas there for the Philadelphia Eagles. Brought some good context to the conversation as well, and the tight end stuff is interesting to me, and the offensive linemen in the draft, I think, are honing in to be a big one, as well as those defensive reinforcements. They got to fix those too. So some interesting stuff still happening here, John, in the offseason. Let's go right to that breaking news, John. We'll spend a little time here talking about Jake Elliott. I agree with what you said to Andrew. We maybe don't talk about special teams enough, Johnny Mac, and I think maybe that's not just me and you. I think that might be an NFL world thing as a whole. But I wonder, John, are the Eagles not putting enough stock in this? I mean, if you think about the game, and I understand there are people out there who are like, kickers aren't football players, kicker don't matter. Kickers have, you could argue they're worth 7 to 10 points per NFL game. I mean, that's certainly more impactful than a backup quarterback is, on any given week. I think the Eagles should put more stock in this, and I think Jake Elliott's a big concern. They've reworked the contract. What do you make of the reworking of it, and just how the Eagles should handle this kicker situation moving forward?
Well, I think, and I think we talk about special teams more than anybody. Just in general, though, people don't seem to care about it, even though it's the third phase. But and it's important, and you can win and lose games. You look at Jordan Davis blocking a kick to beat the LA Rams. You look at Brandon Aubrey, what he brings to the Cowboys. You talk about, we were talking about awful quarterback situations. I think a lot of people don't realize that Minnesota was over 500 last year, in large part because of their kicker. He made like 10 field goals over 50 yards. He was automatic. Alabama kid, so you should be thrilled by.
Was it Will Reichard? Is that who?
Yeah,
it was? Yeah.
Will the Thrill. He was second team All Pro, I believe. Might have been first team. He actually had a better season than even Aubrey from long range. But yeah, they're very important. And when you have guys, and that specifically is where Jake has declined. The 50 plus, where he had this stretch of 3 years where he's 18 of 21. He's kind of fallen off a cliff from 50 plus. And that's where you really need, especially in this era where guys are kicking it as well as they kick it. And remember, the Eagles haven't made the decision on long snapper. They could bring back Charlie Hewlett again. Maybe they will. But right now they don't have a long snapper. Braden Mann's back as the punter. I think they should have brought in competition, but he makes a lot of money for a kicker. And again, this is the weird dynamic of the NFL. Like, people want to say, well, $3.9 million isn't that much for a third quarterback. I got a lot of that when I questioned it. It's a hell of a lot when you look at it compared to the rest of the league. Now, $6 million, which is now $5 million, is a hell of a lot for a kicker, and that's the reason they're not moving on. That's the only reason.
I know, but if it's good for 7 to 10 points a game, like you just said, and they can get more wins, why not bite the bullet? They're willing to bite the bullet in other areas where it's impactful. I'm not saying
that's what I'm saying. You can't have it one way and then say it that, and then you're clutching your pearls because the kicker gets paid too much. He's not helping you. I
would have moved on from Jake, John. I know you said, and maybe I'm wrong on this, I'd have to look at the data a little further. You said it's been down from his standard. Hasn't it been bottom of the league standard?
Oh yeah, he's near he's way down.
Right. So it's not just like, Jake's not playing to his normal standard. It's like Jake is one of the worst kickers in the league in the last 2 years.
Yeah, from long range. Yeah. Now he's still been rock solid from 40 in. Except, he's also had some issues with extra points, which obviously is 33 yards. And for some reason, he's had those issues. So, he was a great kicker in his prime, and he hasn't been a great kicker, and that's tough. how many times do I say the NFL moves fast? That's tough for people to realize. And, what they did is basically guaranteed he's going to be here by doing what they did with his contract. $6 million to $5 million, but all of it guaranteed. So he's back. He's the kicker. And I think there should have been competition. I don't think there's any question there should have been competition.
He's been what, like a 70% kicker last couple of years? Is that what it is, or is it?
Well, the issue, no. Well, I don't have the numbers. I can look up the numbers, but he's been fine under 40. But that's those kicks.
That's not where you win on the margins. I mean, the teams who are kicking the 58 yarders, the 56 yarders,
exactly.
Those are the teams who are really getting that,
and that's where he fell off a cliff. Now, last year was 20 of 27, so it's 74%. And, that's down from 2023 was his last big year when he was 93.8%, 30 of 32. But the issue is 50 plus. So, if you go and the number of 50 plus kicks exploded in the NFL because so many guys are making them. But if you go back, he was 3 of 3 from 50 plus in 2021. He is 5 of 6 in 2022. He was 7 of 8 in 2023. So over 3 years, he missed 2 kicks over 50 yards. In 2024, he was 1 of 7. In 2025, he was 4 of 8. So he's 5 of 15, 33.3% over the past 2 seasons. That's not good enough. The 3 seasons prior, he was 15 out of 17. And he's 5 out of 15 over the last 2 years. That's not good. Not good. And certainly to the point where.
What do you do? I guess just the money is too big, so you got to just let it go.
Well, I like I said, I mean, look, really, we're talking about $6 million is too big when we're talking. Now, again, there's a different thought process when it comes. That's a lot of money for a kicker. There's
right, and then you have to get rid of it, eat some of it, get another kicker. You're probably looking at a $10 million deal.
But it doesn't hurt to bring in competition. Maybe you bring in an undrafted kid as a rookie who's making nothing.
Yeah, who kicked for the Rams after they got rid of their kicker halfway through the year last year?
Yeah, the big kid.
Yeah, what was that? The thicker kicker they called him.
Yeah,
everybody's got a nickname now for their kicker.
Right.
Our kicker is the stinky kicker right now. How's that?
But I think they should have brought in competition. And and I'm not saying a veteran guy who's proven. I'm saying take the best kicker in college. Most kickers aren't getting drafted. Maybe 1 or 2 get drafted each year at the most. And there's some high-level undrafted free agent kickers. Take that guy. Take the best of those guys and let him compete. And then if he wins the job, all right, you got to eat $6 million, whatever. So what? Then you got a cost-effective guy who's kicking at a high level for 4 years, hopefully.
Right. This is what I struggle with, because John, your explanation about the kicking stuff and the money makes complete sense. I mean, everything is not in a vacuum, and $6 million might sound like baby peanuts when you're talking about an edge rusher as compared to a kicker. But I love this comment by Rasmussen. He's like, meanwhile, there's Ojulari getting more money and he does nothing, and it's like that's where I'm like, why just keep Jake for the money when you can actually have an impact to your football team, by making the move? Now, there's no guarantee it works, but that's what I struggle with. There's dudes making more money than Jake that are doing nothing for the team. Jake's out there every day. Jake can account for 7 to 10 points a game, and then sometimes even more. I mean, that's pretty significant on a football game and a football team.
Well, this is another thing, again, lower level, but before this, and they haven't updated it yet at Over the Cap, obviously. So, the Eagles extended him at a high level for a kicker. So he's under contract. That it might have changed. Mike didn't report that, so I can't say it for certain. He might be a free agent next year. It tends to happen when you do these things. But He was under contract through 2028 because they extended him. And he's got 4 void years on top of that. So, again, when you misevaluate or you extend somebody early who's playing at a high level and he no longer is playing at a high level, then you find this is the bad part of that. This is the bad part of void years and early extensions. This is the bad part of it. Now, people aren't going to recognize that because it's a kicker. But the Eagles, Jake Elliott is the Eagles kicker next season. Maybe he would have won a competition, but he's the Eagles next kicker, the kicker next season because of the contract he signed.
John, any idea off the top of your head, maybe you'd look it up, what the margin, what the average, margin for victory is in the NFL?
I have no idea, but
There's
there's a
probably
shitload of
3 points. I mean,
there's a shitload of 1-score games. I mean, all the NFL does is send out stuff about there are 10 1-score games this week. That's what they love because
right. Close, yeah.
The witching hour, as Scott Hansen will call it on Red Zone, where everybody watches shitty football for 55, but it's exciting for the last 5 minutes and everybody loses their mind. The whole goal of the league is parity. So yeah, there's a lot of close games and kickers matter a lot.
That's what I mean. I don't think that's something to just, we're paying him 5, so let's just let him roll out there for the 3rd straight year of him potentially sucking. I mean, it's not just last year, John. It was 2 years now. It's 2 straight years that Jake Elliott is not the same player, not the same kicker. Yeah. The $1 million haircut is cool and all, but it's if he's still going to be the kicker, I don't see the advantage here other than you gain $1 million back. I think the cap hit went down by 240. Boy, they're really crunching numbers, aren't they? Aren't they, John?
Yeah. Well,
maybe is why they're not moving on from him in the first place. They're already in a tight crunch.
I'll be interested to see if he's a free agent next year. Instead, he'd been under contract through 2028. So maybe they tweak that to get him off the books quicker. But you still have him for this year. That's not a positive. If you're trying to get somebody off the books earlier, sometimes it works out. Worked out with Dallas Goedert last year. They wiped out his contract and, he was going to be a free agent this year. They wiped out part of Landon Dickerson. It's down to 2 years. So they keep doing this, and that's a signal that things aren't going the way we planned. So for all the love you give Howie with these void years and all fitting all this and creating cap space, this is the negative side when it doesn't work out.
No doubt about it. Interesting stuff there with Jake Elliott, but that's the latest. They just reworked the contract. They lowered the hit from $6 to $5 million, but made it fully guaranteed, as John pointed out. So Jake will be back. John is right about that. I think it's a dumb decision by the Eagles to roll with him for another year after 2 poor seasons for Jake Elliott. He wasn't bad in the 24 playoffs, John, but the 2024 regular season, he was pretty bad. And last year he was pretty bad as well. So I would have, at the very least, brought in competition. And is there fair to say maybe they still will, or probably not with what they just did, right? They just guaranteed the deal.
They guaranteed the deal. Now, he's accomplished a lot in his career. Let's be honest.
I know, but
he's also been very good in the postseason. Which,
like you always say, John, the NFL moves quick, man. I can't go off the 2023 season anymore.
No, but I mean, Super Bowl, I mean, he had a bad season. He had a bad season, but in the playoffs and in the Super Bowl, in the Dome, he was damn good. And, part of it is kicking late in the season in Philadelphia and the Northeast as a whole. They all, Michael Clay brings that up. You see how good kickers are early in the season, then they start to waver because especially the guys,
right, yeah,
which is real. to be fair. And he's one of the kickers. It's great if you play in the dome, but if you're one of the kickers where you're playing in, some of these cities, Cleveland, Pittsburgh, Baltimore, Philly, New England, you got a tougher road. But I mean, he's done that his entire career, and he's done it successfully, and hasn't done it. It's fair to say hasn't done it as successfully the past 2 seasons. I mean, the proof is in the pudding.
Fair enough. Good stuff there. I'm sure people are going to be upset with me about ripping on the kicker this morning for 15 minutes, but we got to do it. And that's how I feel about the damn kicker. I'm not happy about Jake Elliott return. As much as I like Jake for what he's done for the Philadelphia Eagles, that's not lost on me. But I'm trying to win in 2026. I'm not trying to live out the glory days with Jake Elliott, with all due respect. All right, we got some super chats we'll get to. And then coming up next here in hour number 2, folks, we're going to look at the Eagles prospect tracker. All right. They've had a bunch of visits. They had, that John mentioned, the Penn State lineman in yesterday. We're going to talk about some of these players, who's come in, and take a look at that so everybody's up to date on who the Eagles have had in for visits. We'll do that coming up next. Let's get to some super chats now. Nick Gonzalez says this: John, Logan Paul wants to fight NFL guys. Is that right?
Yeah, well, that got shut down pretty quick. But yeah, there was a little social media thing where,
Showbiz or what?
Well, he's under contract now with WWE full time, so they shut it down. They're like, yeah, he's a decent boxer, and he could probably beat NFL players who don't know how to box. Le'Veon Bell, who was turned into a boxer, said, "I'll do it," but he's not a player now. Some other guys, answered it. Most of them don't know how to box and would get beaten by Logan Paul, but, he got shut down by WWE. Just they don't want him getting hurt. You get that. There's all kind of liability for shit like that.
Right.
So just some back and forth nonsense. But that's how he became a star. Back and forth social media nonsense.
Yeah, no doubt about it. And here's Big Fish Little Boat. What's up, brother? I super chatted you yesterday that Tanner is in play before the trade. Big Fish Little Boat taking a victory lap, Johnny Mac. Look at this, a $5 super chat to take a victory lap. I appreciate it.
Who's your source, Big Fish Little Boat 4069, other than
I don't know that he has
conjuring up things in your imagination? And again, there's no immediate trade in play with Tanner McKee. Right now, he's the quarterback 2 and will continue to be the quarterback 2, as I explained in the whole opening segment of the show. But it does give the Eagles more flexibility. Like, if somebody offered them something for Tanner McKee before the Andy Dalton trade, they can't trade him because they don't have a backup quarterback. Now, unless it's, something astronomical, like a second-round pick, obviously a first-round pick, then they'd roll the dice probably. But they couldn't trade him. Now they have more flexibility, at least, that if somebody comes in and bowls them over, they'll feel comfortable, presumably, with Andy Dalton. But you know what? Andy's also 38 years old, and they might see him in camp and say, "Oh, this guy's lost it."
Yeah, right. It could happen too. We'll see. Here's Vulnerable Vitality. What's up, Vitality? Appreciate you being here, my guy. He says this: sorry if you already talked about it. We did not yet. We mentioned the comments, but not this specifically. So thanks, Vitality. He says, sorry if you talked about it, but do you have any thought or insight to Lane's comments about Stoutland staying around the team in some capacity? I can get you guys the exact Lane Johnson quote, but John, he did kind of reference that. He said, I don't think Stout will be too far. Paraphrasing there, but that's kind of what Lane Johnson said about Jeff Stoutland. Your thoughts, John?
Yeah, I don't know if Lane is just flippantly saying that. He was pretty upset, so I don't know. I think it's definitely more on his side than the Eagles side. The Eagles would welcome him. I think his ego was bruised a little bit, so I think it's more on Jeff's side. And if he wants to come back and visit. He certainly could. So I think I think it's more on his side. So if Lane was talking to him and he's sort of, gotten over it, yeah, then I don't think it would be a problem at all. But, I think the key is he's not going to be there every day. He's not going to be the offensive line coach or the run game coordinator. So, visiting a training camp isn't going to help anything. Other than be a nice moment for a bunch of people who like him.
Fair enough. Vitality, thank you, brother. Appreciate it. I'm not sure what to make of that. I don't think Stoutland will be back much. I mean, kind of be an awkward situation, wouldn't it, for Cooper, for Sirianni? I don't know. I just don't feel like that's something that would really happen, but we'll see. Here's ex-buddy. What's up, man? Thank you for the super chat, $20 super chat. I don't know if you're new to the channel. I've never seen the name, but I do appreciate you being here, man. He says this: I've been an Eagles fan for 44 years and wouldn't want to play for the Eagles either if I was a wide receiver. Why would receivers want to play with a quarterback that doesn't get the ball out on time when receivers are open? Receivers are open! Exclamation point.
Well, Hollywood Brown's coming. He's going to be introduced at 10:30 this morning. Going to talk to him a little bit later. There's plenty of receivers that want to play for the Philadelphia Eagles because they win a lot of games. And they have won a lot of games. Talked about Jonathan Jones, who talked to us yesterday. Why did he choose the Eagles? Because they win. They win. They win more than most. As I said, AJ's a unique person. Use that word again. He's a lot different than many people. And I think you saw that after the Super Bowl. He was like, all right, this is it. His Super Bowl is going out and destroying Emmanuel Forbes' career and destroying his old friend Isaiah Rodgers in a competitive environment and destroying, Marshawn Lattimore. That's his Super Bowl. So not everybody's like AJ.
I'm so sick of this AJ shit, man. I mean, I get it. AJ Brown wants to dominate the guy across from him. I mean, I know, John, you don't put as much stock in the stats. I get it, but the stats do partly tell a story. Like you can't rack up 5K yards without the ball coming to you, without you having a chance to beat the corner on the other side of you. You just can't. I don't get what he's so what does he think is going to be so much better? 2 throws a game come out on time more than they do in Philly? Is that what he's clamoring about? I don't get it. I really don't get it.
I think he's clamoring about. He's not clamoring about it, but
he's kind of clamoring about it.
I think. Well, he hasn't said a word this offseason, pretty much, except for his wink.
Doing it, though. Yeah.
Except for his wink.
Wait, did you hear him yesterday? Oh man, he is a troll though. I got to give him credit. I can respect a troll. He is a troll, John.
Yeah, he does.
His agency did a video of him, and it's like they were asking him a couple of questions. They ask him the most memorable game you can remember in your life. You know what he says?
I did not see it.
He says, the Patriots and Giants Super Bowl when David Tyree had the helmet catch and he cried. I'm like, you played in 2 Super Bowls. Wait, you won a Super Bowl. All right. You've won multiple NFC championships. That's the most memorable game of your life?
Well, I think a lot of they asked Kyler Murray that, and he said the Brett Favre interception in the NFC Championship game, and he cried this week. I think they look at it more like growing up. I don't know, than actually being involved. But I don't know. Sometimes AJ trolls. I don't know if that's a troll, other than he likes the Patriots. But I think, he was a Patriots fan. I mean, I don't think that's a big deal. I mean, everybody doesn't grow up an Eagles fan.
I know. I just thought, I mean, it's one thing for, a regular person to say that. I mean,
it's like
the game at the highest level. You've achieved things at the highest level. You are arguably one of the best in your era. I mean, I thought there would be, I don't know. It'd be like asking Tom Brady and he would say, "Oh, when Joe Montana won," I'd be like, "What?"
Well, he might. I mean, he was a big Joe Montana guy.
Maybe.
And that happened with Kyler this week, so that's why I just knew.
People are telling me it was an old video. I saw AJ post it yesterday, so I'm not sure if it was or not.
Yeah. So whatever. It's probably the question of what made you a football fan, or what whatever. What as a fan. I'm sure if you phrased it, what's the most memorable moment in your career, he'd go to a moment in his career. Now, if he's trying to troll, he'd probably talk about something in Tennessee. But I don't think, I didn't see it, but I don't think that's one of his troll things. Although he can troll.
He can troll, there's no doubt. I still don't know what the guy's bitching about. I see Keith crying in the chat. He's like, we throw the ball 20 times a game, and half of them go to AJ, Keith.
Opportunity. Forget about targets. Forget about.
Do you think AJ's right, or should AJ be happy where his feet are?
Is AJ right? AJ's right. Should he be happy where his feet are? Yeah, probably. To me, they're two different things. He's completely right. I don't. I mean, you've agreed with that. I
think the offense is not
the fucking passing game is brutal. He's right. Should he be happy? Yeah, probably. I mean, he's going to go to a team that's not going to win as much that he has won here. And I'm not saying the Eagles are going to continue at this level forever. I'm saying, hey, the next 4 years, he's not going to win as much, no matter where he goes. Just I'm playing the odds.
Well, fair enough. Buddy, thanks for your super chat, man. Appreciate the $20. Here's Brian Pumper checking in. Fellas, do you think it's beneficial for our quarterback to do side missions when he should be knee-deep in the Mannion playbook?
Come on.
Flag football? What a joke.
Knee-deep. He doesn't even have the Mannion playbook.
Speaking of a good troll, though, John. Brian,
does the Mannion playbook exist yet? I don't even know. No, again, offseason is strictly collectively bargained. There's no football going on. They have lives. He's not the only one going out there to play stupid flag football for Saudi Arabian money. Saquon's doing it. Who else? Everybody's doing it.
I got no problem with them doing other stuff. I mean, they're human beings.
Ludicrous.
No, they're not video games here. Here is one more. Gary checks in. I blame Janky Rondo. Member for 18 months. Thank you, Gary. Blaming Janky. Well, for the stream with AJ? Is that what that was?
Yeah, the original I just saw Janky Rondo was in the news again. I don't.
He does a good job, Janky Rondo. He's got a big audience.
I don't give two shits about Janky Rondo.
I'm not saying you have to. I'm just saying he does a decent job. Has a pretty good.
I don't think he's controlling anything. That's the problem. But I don't know what he's speaking of.
John. Come on.
Yeah, I don't know what. I don't know why you blame Janky Rondo either.
Good stuff, Gary. Thank you, brother. Appreciate you doing it today. All right, Johnny Mac, we're going to get into the Philadelphia Eagles with the draft coming up, some of the top 30 visits that they've had. I'm going to pull up the visit tracker. I don't know how many visits they're up to now at this point, Johnny Mac. I know they brought in the Penn State guard. I think you mentioned that they did yesterday.
Yeah, I don't know if that happened yet. He's coming in. He was at Penn State. In fact, I know it hasn't happened. The only one I know that's happened is Cooper, Omar
Cooper, right? Yeah. Okay.
They just started them. And Penn State had its pro day yesterday. So that's where, Vega, informed everyone there that he was going to have a 30 visit. By the way, that's my pet peeve. Not top 30, 30. For all the,
right.
for
You
all
say
the
top 30,
quarters.
everybody thinks that they're the best 30 prospects on the
Yeah,
board or whatever.
exactly. There's a lot of people that bring in. Now, the Eagles don't usually bring in a lot of day 3 prospects. Well, they'll bring in a hand, maybe a couple, but there's a lot of teams that, bring in like more, day 2, day 3 prospects that they're focusing on. So it's not top 30, but you get 30 visits. And the Penn State edge rushers coming in as well. Danny Dennis Sutton, I believe his name is. He's coming in. So this all came out because of Penn State's pro day.
Right.
And then also I mentioned Jalen Kilgore, who South Carolina safety.
Right. DB, right.
Yeah. Ryan Fowler, who is plugged in at the college level, confirmed that he's coming to the Eagles for a 30 visit. So to me, that's the only 4 I know of so far. And the only one that's actually had a visit, he was in on yesterday, as a matter of fact, was Omar Cooper, the Indiana receiver. But Vega, the big Penn State offensive lineman, who will probably the Eagles will draft because they'll have to learn how to spell his first name. Everybody calls him Vega. He's coming in, Danny Dennis Sutton, and that's a guy to keep an eye on because they're going to need an edge rusher. Now, he's more of a day 2-ish guy, I would think. But, he's a possibility. And Kilgore's a possibility day 2 as well because they need a safety. So those are two interesting names, but those are the only 4 I'm aware of to this point. And it's just obviously they've just started yesterday, so it's still early.
Fair enough. Good stuff there. John, where do you think they end up drafting a safety? I'm kind of torn on it too, because you brought up, they used already a premium pick last year with Andrew Makuba. It's not really in the card. I don't think it's in the cards in round 1. I do like that Dylan Donovan kid too. I'm with you on that. Where do you think they end up taking a safety in this year's NFL draft?
Yeah, well, the problem is, they have to take one. Even if you bring back Marcus Epps, you have to take one. So, and the only way you're going to get one that can play right away is taking them on day 2. And you want to repopulate the offense. So, again, the trade market is something we don't talk about because it's hard to talk about the trade market. And you just saw it yesterday with Andy Dalton. Nobody saw that coming. Maybe the Eagles trade for a safety, but there doesn't look like much help on the free agent market, but they need a safety. And if they don't trade for one, they got to go get one in the draft. And then if you start talking about, well, now they need an edge rusher and say they got to use a day 2 pick on Danny Dennis Sutton. Well, then how are you repopulating? You're taking a safety and an edge rusher and you're back repopulating the defense and taking all defensive players. Now you probably take an offensive guy at 23, but still. So there's more work to be done before the draft by Howie Roseman. No question about it.
We will see what he ends up doing with that. The other name, John, so not many names yet then, all right? We're still pretty low. You named the 4, obviously, 2 of them from Penn State, Omar Cooper, and then Jalen Kilgore. So not many names yet there for the Philadelphia Eagles, but we will see who they end up bringing in for the top 30 visits. And they are relevant, as you point out yesterday, John, on the show, that, they could be names that maybe aren't drafted here, but could end up on the Eagles a couple years down the line after they're done their rookie contract somewhere else.
Yeah, Eagles always go back to them. So due diligence, and that's part of it as well, because there's certain guys, you're not going to be able to get because Omar Cooper's probably in that category because you're probably not going to take him at 23 and he's going to be gone by your second round pick, so he's probably going to be in no man's land. But who knows what happens down the road? So that's my new. It's never going to work, I know, but I'm going to try. But just like legal negotiating period, 30 visit, a top 30 visit, 30 visit. I'm going to try. It's not going to work.
Sooner or later, you'll have me calling it that, John. No doubt about it. John, any names that are like Eagle names that maybe haven't been reported, but names that you look at and you're like, oh, the Eagles are probably going to end up bringing him in. Anybody like that for you this year?
Well, remember when I say that's an Eaglesy pick, it's changing a little bit, especially on the offense. It was easy to point out offensive line guys because I knew Stoutland so well in his critical factors. Like I said early in this process before they moved on, like Caden Proctor's a Stoutland guy. No doubt in my mind. Now I'm sort of just projecting with Blake Miller and Monroe Freeling. However, when you talk about 30 visits, sometimes you don't bring in guys you're interested in to sort of, if you really like somebody and you've done all your homework and you've locked them in on your board, you don't want an alert around the league that, oh, the Eagles are interested in Blake Miller. I'll use Blake Miller because DiCecco brought him up as well. You don't want to alert the rest of the league that you're that high on the kid, so maybe you don't bring him in. Sometimes a lot of people don't talk about. Sometimes you bring in kids to talk about other kids. So you might bring in, and I'm just making it up because it's the two Penn State guys, but you might bring in Danny Dennis Sutton to talk about Vega and try to get more information on Vega from him. So there's a lot of layers to it. And one thing I always bring up with Darius Geis, sometimes these visits don't go well. The presumption is they always go well. Oh, they brought him in. They must like him. Sometimes you bring somebody in and you rule them out because it didn't go well for whatever reason. So I think when you look at it logically, like people just say, oh, they're interested in Danny Dennis Sutton because they bring in Danny Dennis Sutton. Well, maybe they didn't like Danny Dennis Sutton when they brought him in. I don't want to pick on him, but that could happen and has happened in the past. So, it's not as cut and dry as people often make it out to be.
Fair enough. Good point there, Johnny Mac. Appreciate everybody being here today. Don't forget to hit that like button. We got about 28 minutes left on the show today. We had Andrew DiCecco in hour number 1, who was excellent. Always good to talk to Andrew DiCecco. We appreciate him joining the program today as we get a little closer to the NFL draft. John, can you believe 30-something days to the NFL draft, man? What is it, April 23rd? Is that when it is this year?
I believe so. Yeah.
I better look. I own April 23rd. All right, that's not bad. April 23rd to April 25th. There you go. That's the NFL draft, and that's not that many days away, John. How many days until April 23? 35 days, Johnny Mac. 35 days from the NFL draft.
A lot of work to do in between then and the draft. A lot of work.
Yeah. They'll have all the 30 visits or get most of them done by that point, obviously. And then we'll see who the Eagles end up taking in the NFL draft. John, they're up to 9 picks in the NFL draft. So they have quite a bit of capital or quite a bit of moves to make. What do they have, John? 4 in the top 100? Is that what it is?
Yeah, they have, and they got the extra 6th-round pick for Isaiah Rodgers. So coming in, everybody thought they wouldn't have a 6th-round pick or a 7th-round pick. And they got an extra comp pick because all those projection sites do a good job, but you don't have the exact contract details because it's all based on, there's only 32 of them, and it's all based on for players. Sometimes there's compensatory picks for losing executives with the Rooney Rule, but So it's tough to project, and they do a good job. But they got that one wrong, and it benefited the Eagles. They got an extra sixth-round pick. Not an extra. They're only sixth-round pick because they didn't have one coming in. But yeah, the top 3 days, the top 2 days, so the premium picks, 23, 54, 68, 98, is what they are on day 1 and day 2. And then they have 122, 137 in the 4th round, 153, 178 in the 5th round, and 215 in the 6th round. That's their picks.
There you go. Good picks for the Eagles. We got a bunch of them. We'll see what they end up doing with them for the Philadelphia Eagles moving into the NFL draft. All right, John, what's the biggest hole right now on the team outside of the edge rusher spot? I know that's the main one, obviously, with the departure of Jalen Phillips, but what's the most pressing one where you think they have to address this or it could really hurt their season?
Safety. I mean, they don't have a safety right now. If they had to play today, they don't have. You'd have to play Sidney Brown, I guess.
And what's your expectation on how they fill that? Do you think it's a draft pick?
I think it's going to be a trade. I
wouldn't feel great about a rookie safety with Andrew McCuba. I don't think anybody
I don't like that either. Now, there's some talk about Michael Carter moving back there full time, but I don't think that's a plan that should generate confidence. And you could, they have Andre Sam back. Brandon Johnson did some nice things, but again, very young players on futures deals. That's not going to merit much confidence. I know people have often speculated, move Kaylee Ringo back to safety because he can't play corner.
Is Sidney Brown out of the running?
From everything I've seen with the way Vic treats him, I would think, he's not in the conversation to be the starting safety. Still a good special teams player. He's still under contract, but I would think he'd more likely to be traded than to be the starting safety. They don't have an answer in-house. So, and you could sign Marcus Epps as a stopgap. And I know people, because of the 2022 season where he did a pretty good job, not the same player. I don't think that'll work either. They need a safety, almost like they should have re-signed Reed Blankenship.
Right, at $8 million. I don't know, but the way they're crunching the cap, maybe Reed was way above what they were willing to pay. I mean, they're looking for $240,000 of savings on Jake Elliott's deal. Now I know they cut it from 6 to 5.
Well, they're not. They're not looking for anything. They're top 10 in cap space now.
I don't know, John. Yeah, I'm sure you've been through it. I mean, we've all been there. The monthly budget is tight, and you're looking to get a penny back wherever you can, my friend. That seems like what the Eagles are doing to me.
Well, no, they're just setting up for things they want to do. And there's a science to roster building, and you don't want to spend a lot of money getting out of kicker deals. Whereas everything changes and fluid. They paid a hell of a lot of money, and they'll pay a hell of a lot of money to get rid of Carson Wentz back in the day and so forth and so on at different positions, but there's different values to different positions. And, the Eagles value quarterback 3 more than everybody else. So they're willing to pay more for a quarterback 3. They're not willing to take on dead money for a kicker.
Well, maybe they should change that.
Well, that's a valid argument. Maybe they should, but that's where they are. And obviously, Howie overall, you got to be honest, has done a very good job. And generally his philosophy works, But, even I am starting to look at the void years on these 1-year deals, and I'm like, I mean, that's starting to hurt you, dude, a little bit.
I don't get why they do them on all the 1 year. Like, wouldn't you rather just pay the $4 million and then have it off your books in the next year? I don't even get it. Like, I don't want to deal with contracts 4 years down the line that were $5 million.
Well, it's not. You're not dealing with that. It just accelerates into the second year. But you're losing $1 million here, $1 million there. And it's different with guys like Rick Woolen, who got a pretty significant 1-year deal. Like, I get it with him because you don't want to put 12 to 15 million on your cap this year. So I get it with players like him. But, why are you putting void years on Johnny Munt? You're paying him $1.2 million. Just be done with it. So anyway, yeah. So it depending on the player.
We'll see what happens there. Good stuff, Johnny Mac. 20 minutes left to go on the show today. A lot of things happening here in the Eagles offseason, and 35 days until the NFL draft. Now in phase 2 of free agency. Any clear names, John, still out there that you look and you're like, ooh, that's an Eagle name? I wouldn't be surprised. One name that, John, that you were mentioning a lot on the show was AJ Espinoza. Is that how you say his name? He's kind of got a confusing name.
Yeah, he signed.
He signed.
Well, and it really wasn't Eagles-like. It was simply because he was one of the few, competent, I think, edge rushers left. But I think they need a ceiling, a number 1 player. I don't think like he would be 3rd, 4th rotational guy. Which if you have to go that way, and it's got to be Nolan, it's got to be Jalix, it's got to be Ebiketie, and a 4th guy. You got to find the 4th guy. But I want the 1 so everybody can kick down into their role. That's the problem at edge rusher. So that's got to be either be done on the trade market, or it's got to be done in the draft. And I don't see
who's the unlikely trade player that we're not thinking of. Grenard's like the popular name, but who's the player we're not thinking of that could be traded? Maybe a guy going into his 5th year, maybe a rookie who needs a change of scenery. Who's the guy we're not thinking of right now, John, that's out there?
That's why we don't talk about it, because, I have no idea. But, that's how we shop. That's CJ Gardner-Johnson. That's what you're looking for. That's what you're looking for. Somebody with a big upside who, for whatever reason, his original team doesn't want to give him an extension, hasn't really reached his potential. That's the wheelhouse, and that's a very difficult wheelhouse to find. And it's even more difficult at edge rusher because nobody wants to give up edge rushers. Nobody, because everybody's looking for edge rushers. So it becomes even more difficult at that position. And that's why everybody's focused. The only reason Grenard's available is because they're in cap issue hell. And otherwise they bring him back. So it's really, it's really difficult. And that's why I say, like, it's easy to have that walkaway number. And we all get the walkaway number. People gave me a lot of shit for playing devil's advocate because they didn't want to hear me say devil's advocate. I'm not paying Jalen Phillips $30 million, but the alternative is you're back to where you were before you traded for him. And that's, you don't have the guy to spearhead the edge rush. You don't have him. Hopefully Jalix Hunt turns into that, but that's a big hope. That's all it is. And you don't have that player now. So I get it, but if you're willing to go at 25, maybe you got to pay the price. Who said earlier this week, one of our guests, and I thought it was interesting, I have to write about that at some point, is that, Howie's got this philosophy of not extending players in season when he thinks he's a legitimate contender. And he's been very honest about it. And I think it was John Stolness. So I'll give John the credit. And it's like, maybe you have to change that philosophy. And maybe you have to treat people like adults, because there are going to be agents calling you saying, what, you don't like my guy? I want an extension. Well, deal with it. If you got Jalen Phillips back at 23, 24 by extending him in season, you don't have this fucking problem.
Right. Still have the problem though of it takes two to tango, right?
Yeah, but I truly believe he would have signed an extension in season, because at that point you don't know. Nobody's thinking about how the cap is going to explode. Nobody's thinking about that at that point. He's like, wow, I haven't played like a $25 million edge rusher and I'm getting 25. I think he would have ran to sign that paper. But then you get to the actual open market, it's like a Cowboys tax, because you're waiting instead of. And Howie says it all the time, they want to act early, but they don't want to act early in season. Maybe they have to change that. And their approach has been, well, if we do it for one guy, the next guy's going to be at his door and the agent and all that kind of crap. Well, hey, that's something you got to deal with and explain, look, we love your guy, whatever, but this is a guy we had to get done early for these reasons. And I believe if they acted in season last year, he'd still be here and you wouldn't have this problem.
Well, we've now let a couple edge rushers go, and had to replace them, John. So, the wheel keeps on turning at that position. I don't understand why. Maybe they're not in love with the guy. I don't know. They let Sweat walk, and then they needed to replace him. Then they traded for Jalen Phillips. Now they let Jalen Phillips walk. Now we're in the same boat here. We're waiting for them to make a move at edge. It's like, just get one of them signed, man. Josh Sweat at this point looks like the greatest bargain in the world for what he signed for last year. Now, I know he's got the knee problems and stuff like that, but I don't know. I don't get why they keep this saga going.
Well, I mean, yeah, everything is different. You can't comp those two things, because they were okay with letting Josh walk. Now you can argue they shouldn't have been okay. They made Jalen Phillips a priority. He was their priority entering free agency this year. So different circumstance. They wanted to get Jalen Phillips done. They didn't want to get Josh Sweat done. He was below the demarcation line I always talk about. Again, you can argue that, but they're completely different. And in the case of Phillips, and John was the one who kind of put that in my mind. So that's why I give him credit, John Stolness. I'm like, you know what? He's right. If he revisited that, which has become a policy, he doesn't want to extend people when he thinks they're a Super Bowl level team. Maybe you have to revise that policy.
We'll see what they end up doing, Johnny Mac. It's going to be interesting to find out with this edge rushing room. I think there is some stuff out there. I think Pump says sign Hassan Redick. What do you think? Not with Vic, right?
No, I don't think Hassan wants to come back either.
Yeah,
that wasn't not the best ending in the world.
That didn't go well.
No. Plus, he's not the same player. It's not 2022. Had a great season, though. Had a great freaking season. That's why you got to act, man. I remember I said, Hassan should ask for more money, and he did in a way. But you got to act. When you're a player and you have leverage, you got to act. And it didn't work out. But he was probably not going to have that type of year again. That was a special season for Hassan Redick.
John, something I brought up yesterday in the afternoon show. We only have 10 minutes left, but I do want to run this by you real quick. Something I think that's fallen away under the radar this offseason. Like me and you haven't talked about it much. I haven't seen it really talked about anywhere. There's been some conversation. It's not like it's been never referenced by our show. We have brought it up, but there's talk about Jalen Hurts in the new system. There's talk about Sean Mannion in the new system. There's talk about A.J. Brown, Devontae Smith, Dallas Goedert in the new system. There's not a whole lot of conversation about Saquon Barkley in the new system.
Oh, come on. I talk about it all the time. He doesn't have the patience to run a stretch.
What about the health? What about everything with Saquon? I mean, I think that's maybe one of the bigger questions on the offense this year is what you're getting in Saquon Barkley.
Yeah, I think this is enjoy it because I don't think he's going to be back. I don't think he's here. Well, I mean, part of that is just the life cycle of running backs. Let's put it this way. If he has another year like he had last year, there's no way he's back. So he's got to bounce back from a production standpoint. Not all his fault. Obviously, we talked about the offensive line issues, but another season like he had last year, there's no way he's going to be back. And I think, you look at 2024. Well, 2023 averaged 3.9 yards a carry with the Giants. 2022, 4.4, which is okay. 2021 was 3.7. Last year was 4.1. Like, is that the real Saquon Barkley? Or is 5.8, 2024, 2,005 yards? Is that the real Saquon Barkley?
Yeah, the evidence would insinuate the former, not the latter.
I would think. Now, plus you have the impact of the changing offense. Now, is it really going to change or is it lip service? So that's another part of the equation. If it's really going to change and you're going to go wide zone stretch all the time, does that suit Saquon Barkley? Does that sound to anybody like that would suit Saquon Barkley? Patience, letting the blocks develop. He's a hit the hole guy. And when he gets in trouble, he doesn't hit the hole and he bounces outside looking for the home run. He's not Kenneth Walker picking and choosing where to go, where the block's going to be. So yeah, I have a lot of questions on his fit, where he is as a player. Because you're talking about a guy. This is ninth season for a running back, and he keeps himself in great shape and all of that. And he's 29. He's going to be 30 next February. I mean, if you're a betting man, I would say he's not going to be an Eagle in 2027, excuse me. We're in 2026.
We will see what happens. Johnny Mac, let's go to one more chat here. Daz Deals checks in. What's up, Daz? Member for 16 months. Thank you, brother. J Mac, when do we get to see the Bulldog? John, you put the picture up on X. Can I pull it up?
Yeah.
Let me pull it up. I'll get the picture for you guys. Here, I got the tweet here. Here's the picture of the Bulldog for those who Tank has landed, baby. This is an all-time dog name, John. I might have to one day, maybe not my next dog, but maybe a couple dogs down the line, I might have to rob the name Tank from you for my dog. That is a great dog name. All right, here we go, guys. Tank is coming up. There he is, man. What a great picture. I freaking love Tank, John. You put that up on X. I assume he's grabbing onto your leg there as you're working.
Yeah, he's a horse, man. You can't even tell by then. You can't even tell by that picture. When you get him from a certain angle, he looks smaller. But he weighs like 60 pounds.
What is he? You said he was 3 years old, right?
Yeah. And he's got these giant paws. I mean, his paws are like Andre the Giant paws.
Yeah, you can see him in that picture, man. Big old paws.
Yeah. But he's a good boy. He's a good boy.
That's important. Good stuff there. Johnny Mac, there's Tank, everybody. in the introduction of Tank to Birds 365. That's a big day. That's a big day for everybody. All right, so good stuff there from Tank. All right, John, 5 minutes left to go on the show today. Philadelphia Eagles continue to roll through the offseason, all right, as we try and get some clarity on everything. Yesterday, I asked you, John, about Jalen Carter's contract. Do you think there's a walkaway number on Jalen Carter's contract?
No, certainly not now. I mean, there doesn't have to be. Like they have time. I mean, you know.
Yeah, but when push comes to shove, and it is time.
Well, that's what I mean. I mean, if he plays like he played last year, I mean, yeah, there's going to be. But assuming he plays well, no, I think they'll get it done. They have a long history of setting the markets for players at certain positions. They did it for Jalen Hurts. They did it for Landon Dickerson. They've done it numerous times in the past, and they'll do it again for Jalen Carter. So no, I don't think it'll be any. The only issue is obviously if he descends as a player. They're trying to get it done now, but again, he probably wants more than the Eagles are trying to make it as team friendly as possible. So that's where the two-way street comes into it. But I expect when they do sign it, whenever that is, and they've had plenty of time because he's under contract and they'll pick up his option on May 1st as a placeholder. So he's under contract through 2027, which is next season. So there's plenty of time. There's no urgency other than, you know, they want to get the best deal possible. And that usually means being proactive. But that takes two. That's where it takes two to tango. So, but they will set the market when they sign Jalen Carter at defensive tackle.
And you think it's a when, right? You did float earlier this summer. Maybe they are thinking about it. That type of haul. I do understand it. You do think
that was more of if you can get. I don't think they could get 2 first-round picks. I'm saying if you can get the back because of the Max Crosby deal, which turned out to be not even a deal. Can you get 2 first-round picks? Then I think, yeah, that's worth discussing at least. Because Morrow's a good player. And if he continues to play well, you know, would you rather have Jordan Davis, Morrow, Jomo, and 2 first-round picks, or just Jordan Davis and Jalen Carter, and Morrow leaves? I think that's a decent discussion to have. But I don't think you can get 2 first-round picks for Jalen Carter right now.
Now, if he comes out this year and is a first-team All-Pro and he's looking for $40 million,
but then I think you're happy to pay him. So either way, if he's a first-team All-Pro, I don't think they're walking away from him.
No, I don't either. I think they should pay Jalen. I don't think they're. I'm not in the camp that I believe they should trade Jalen Carter. I'm not in that camp at all. I mean, you have a player like that, you got to get him under contract, I think, at least. So that would be my perspective on it. But good stuff there, Johnny Mac. All right, John, a couple minutes left here in Eagle off-season land. We'll have a Football Friday edition tomorrow. We'll be just 34 days away from the NFL draft at that point. NFL draft will kick off on a Thursday, April 23rd. All right, so that's coming up next month. We're rolling through the offseason, man, already getting close to the end of March, John, if you can believe it.
Yeah, it goes quick. Today, Hollywood Brown later this afternoon. So we'll hear from Hollywood and his.
You get anything from talking to these guys? I mean, you've talked to a couple of them. I haven't asked you much about it.
Got some interesting stuff from Jonathan Jones. He's a pilot. Didn't know that. He flew in to sign his contract. Flew from Charlotte to Philly by himself.
He flew the plane. Wow, that's cool.
Yeah. He's a pilot.
I don't know why, but that scares the living daylights. I mean, like people, I have no interest in experiencing life as a pilot. I respect them greatly, but I don't have any interest in doing it myself.
I think it'd be pretty cool to fly your own plane.
I think it'd be very cool. I just don't. I will leave that to the people that.
Well, I hate air travel so much. I would love to be a pilot and have my own plane and just be able to go where. ever you want to go and say, I got to go to Philly today and I'm in Charlotte and I can get my freaking own plane.
Yeah, right.
How much easier would that make things?
What's a plane like that run? Not one of these buku private jets, but like one of those little planes.
I have no idea, but they're pretty expensive.
Yeah, probably.
I remember I'm a wrestling guy. Brock Lesnar's a pilot, and he hated traveling. When he became a wrestler, he quit to go to UFC. The reason he quit is because he hated to travel so much. And he became a pilot and bought his own plane. That's me. You know, without being the 300-pound monster that can kick the shit out of everybody. But I do not like traveling. But if I had my own plane, I'd love it.
You might not like planes, John, but you don't hate them as much as Twiz. Twiz says, F a plane. I've never been on one in my life, and I never will be. That's impressive.
Well, I've been on
A lot.
I can't even tell you. Yeah.
I don't even know how you can not fly in your life anymore.
That it is the worst experience. It is the worst customer service experience ever. I've always, if there's any rich people out there, I want to fly on a private jet once in my life. Never have. Don't see it happening. Don't see how it's happening. I'm going to try to make it happen. I don't care where. Take me anywhere.
I'll just be there. Just tell me where to be, and Johnny Mac will be there. I might have to tell my brother, because my brother's he doesn't have a private plane, but maybe his company will get big enough that he'll have a private plane. He's got a big, he started the company in New York, John, raised a bunch of money, AI world, how money flows in that business. It's like, the well never ends. So maybe one day, if
there you go. Well, I'm counting on it. It could be to Baltimore. It could be quick. Just one.
Well, his headquarters is in New York now, and he was telling me they're opening a second place potentially. Maybe it's in Cali. Maybe they need a private jet. I'm gonna say, hey, Joseph, I need you to take Johnny Mac on a trip on the private.
Take plane. Me from Teterboro to Philly. I don't care. I just want to do it once.
There you go. I'm with you. That's a good experience. I've never done it either. I'd love to do it too. Maybe we'll both get to do it one day in our lives. Johnny Mac, good stuff. Your final thoughts here on the Thursday edition.
Getting ready for Hollywood. So we'll see if anything comes of that. And yeah, it's that time of year where things are trickling in. The Eagles are more active in wave 2 than wave 1. So you got Andy Dalton yesterday. Maybe you get something else today.
Maybe. Johnny Mac, good show, man. I will talk to you tomorrow on a Football Friday. Thank you, brother.
All right. Thanks all.
All right, thanks, John. There's Johnny Mac, John McMullen joining us right here on Birds 365. Good show today. Andrew DiCecco was great in hour number 1. Appreciate Andrew DiCecco joining. It's been a bit since we've talked to Andrew, but he is awesome. I love talking to him. I think he does a great job on air too. A lot of times you get a football guy, maybe they're not as good or not as polished on the air. Andrew is excellent on air, excellent in his writing, excellent in all the work he does. Really, really, really good. I like Andrew DiCecco a lot. Andrew, maybe Andrew's a guy I need to talk to about doing some work for Jay. I don't know if that's an option. I know he does a lot of work for other channels as well. So I like Andrew, though. I think he does really good. I think he does really good work. So, all right, guys, appreciate all you guys being here today. All right. It's finally, is it a nice day outside? I see outside some sun. It got randomly cold again. We had like a couple days, guys, where it got to 60s. 50s, and it was nice. And now this week it's been back to windy and cold and all these different things. Let me check the weather app. 40 right now. Tomorrow it'll be 60. Is that right, Keese? All right, so getting a little warmer here. Getting a little warmer, 63 tomorrow, 71 on Sunday. That's what it says at least. 72 on Sunday in Philly. There you go. All right. Maybe Sunday will be a nice day. Maybe I'll get a ZK's garage video done for on Sunday in the nice sunshine. Get the vet out, get a garage going. Maya and I agree with that, man. I don't think we take care of our veterans enough. All right, I don't think we take care of the veterans in this nation enough at all. I think we send money to every foreign. Mayan. I know there are certain things, Mayan, you and I agree on. It's not everything, Mayan. But, we got vets sleeping on the streets. Mine, we agree on that. We take care of every other country in the world. We send money to Israel. We send money to every other damn country that needs $1. We can't take care of the people that fought for our country. You know, maybe I'd like paying taxes in April if they did things like that. Maybe I wouldn't hate it. You know, if every time I drove through the city of brotherly love, I ended up with a damn ticket from some bullshit camera and there's vets on the side of the road and 14 potholes every half mile. You know, maybe it wouldn't be so bad to pay taxes. We don't do that nearly enough. We don't take care of those people nearly enough. Yeah, Sig, don't even get me started on that. Don't even get me started, Sig Lord. We will unload a can of worms that we do not need to open. We will open up a can of worms we do not need to open. Mayan says, welcome to the lab. I don't think so, Mayan. How about common sense? How about common sense, Mayan? That's what I'll agree with you on. Let's get some common sense. I like common sense approach. U.S. DeShay, that's very true. Started in the 1900s when with the birth of the Federal Reserve, when everything went to shit. They started printing money left and right. Took us off the gold standard, all this bullshit. Yep, it's all a farce. It's all a farce. Zander, you good? You seem on edge right now. Big Mike, I'm a little on edge, but I'm fine, dude. I'm all good. I'm all good. You know, I wrapped up watching. You guys are always on my ass about not being a movie guy. No Diddy. You guys rip me all the time for it. You guys want to know a movie series that I like that we finished up? I finished up again last night. You guys want to know a movie series that I like? I'll give you a hint. Iconic author. All right. Catholicism is a big part of the author's life and in his works. It is much further into the world of like kind of more fairy tale than anything I normally like. There you go, CZ. Nailed it. CZ. Nailed it. Nah, not The Passion. The Passion's cool, though. Not Harry Potter. I do like Harry Potter, though, Daz. Lord of the Rings, CZ. Yes. Lord of the Rings, baby. Lord of the Rings. Finished that up last night with the extendeds. All right, that was pretty good. I love that movie. That is such a great trilogy. It really is. At least I think it is. And it's funny because movies like that are really not my style of movies. Like, I don't like fairy tale shit. Like, I really don't. But I think those movies are awesome. CZ, I love the depth in which they're written. All right, and written. I love the depth. Twiz, that's pretty funny. Twiz, I say the same thing about what's that movie everybody loves that I've never seen a day in my life? Shit, what's that thing called? Star Wars. I say the same thing about Star Wars. I've never even seen a minute of Star Wars. People are like, you gotta see Star Wars. Maybe I'd like it. I don't know. Gary says, I don't know, Z. It kind of sounds like maybe you do like him. Gary, maybe I do. I just never have spent the time on him. I do like Lord of the Rings. I've seen it many times. I like The Hobbit even more. They say I've never seen the Hobbit movies. I'll watch them. Sig Lord says, I watched all Lord of the Rings last week. Extended versions or get the F out. Agreed, Sig Lord. I bought the extended versions on my Amazon Prime account. The Hobbit, apparently they changed The Hobbit from the books a lot, though. So I don't know. I want to read the Lord of the Rings books. Tolkien is an awesome story. Like, I was reading about his life. It's fucking sick. Guy created like a whole world to make books in. It's one thing to just make this fairy tale book. It's another thing to create languages and worlds and everything and tie it into all these big, life philosophies. I think it's cool as shit. I never watched Lord of the Rings in my life. How long are those? They're long, Keith. They're like 3.5 each at least for the extendeds, probably. I think the one last night was 4, the final one. The Return of the King was 4, I think, last night. Hello to you at Return of the... Yeah, 4 hours and 23 minutes. 4 hours and 23 minutes on the finale last night of the extended. Pretty amazing. Yeah, I know. I've read about it, CZ. I've read about it because he was in World War I. Yeah, I saw that. CZ. I read about that. It really is, Brandon Lewis. He wrote all that while working and taking care of his family. Incredible. It is. I think 13 years he spent writing those books, if I'm not mistaken. I like Tolkien because he hated modernity, the modern world. I don't know if I said that word right. Modernity, modern. I don't know how to pronounce that. The modern world. Big Mike says, Big Mike, you'd be able to do it. I think you would, Big Mike. I think you would. Hunger Game, I don't know, Keith. I don't know about those ones. I don't think I'm in on that. Well, fly goes fly. This is where you're wrong. She says, I can't imagine Z sitting still for 4 hours unless it's work related. Well, whenever I watch, you got to have the laptop. All right, I still have the laptop. All right, and you got to move around a little bit. Have it on the TV. You walk, you pace, you do what you got to do. You can't sit on the couch for 4 hours. Not me. I can't. I struggle with that. Prince says, I love the Lord of the Rings. Yeah, badass, Prince. Really badass. C.S. Lewis had a bunch of Catholic overtones in Lion, Witch, and the Word. I don't think. Does he? I thought he was. I read the story about Tolkien being one of the reasons that C.S. Lewis became a Christian. I read that story, Rasputin. But C.S. Lewis, I believe, became Anglican, and it pissed off Tolkien. If that's what I read. I don't know how true it is, but that's what I read. So I don't know if it's Catholic or it's Christian or whatever. But we're all Christians, whether you want to acknowledge it or not. If you like Lord of the Rings, you'll love Game of Thrones, Z. And I don't know. I never watched it. But Gary might be right. It might be just because I've never taken the time to do it. I've always dismissed it. Yeah, Rasputin, I read all about it. He says Tolkien actually created the world maps, linguistically functional languages, and an extensive lore. It's amazing, Rasputin, what he wrote. I mean, all the everything, the Hobbits, the Silmarillion, there's a bunch of them. Maybe I'll run the Hobbit movies. Someone said, I read online, somebody said that the Hobbit movies, they changed from the books too much. So I don't know. I kind of like when things are as true to the book as possible. Like I didn't read all the Harry Potter books, but I read the first couple. And the first book was really similar to the movie. Like you could almost like read it right perfect. I think 2 was close to. Feels like maybe later they got a little different. I'm not sure. It doesn't get any more fantasy fairy tale land than Lord of the Rings. That's true, Gary. I love it, though. I thought it was awesome. Fleming, that's a funny comment. That's probably what I would say to the people who ask me if I've seen Star Wars, right? Now you gotta be able to joke with yourself here and there. They were pretty close. All right, I'll check them out. Where's Twiz? Twiz, the movie list is adding. Twizzler. I still got to get to the movies. Wheel of Time. I've never heard of that, Twiz. Or Prince. Wheel of Time. I never seen this. I like things that have like real underlying, messages in them, if that makes sense. That's what I like about Lord of the Rings. Like you can see the clear messages that are within the movie. Brian Pump says all those shows suck. Pump, what do you like? Fantasy football? All right, guys, good show today. I thought we had a solid Birds 365, getting ready for the NFL draft, 35 days away. Thought Andrew DiCecco was great. Curious to see what the Eagles do here. How do they address safety, edge? Do they draft a wide receiver? Do they draft a tight end? How high do they draft a tight end? I think offensive line is like the most obvious one. If they don't use their first-round pick on offensive line, I'll be flabbergasted. I mean, I will be shocked if they don't use their excuse me, if they don't use their first round pick on a if they don't use a first round pick on an offensive lineman. So I'll see what they end up doing. All right, guys, appreciate all of you. Hit that like button. Subscribe to the channel if you're not already. Appreciate you doing it here on the show. And I will see you next time, everybody.
EAGLES, Eagles.